Michael Sala, what do you think, based on your investigation, is the biggest revelation here?
I think the one that is going to be most shocking to people is learning about the influence of elements of Nazi Germany that had been successful in developing a secret space program, and that the Nazis actually were part of the modern UFO phenomenon. People assume that what Kenneth Arnold saw, or what crashed in Roswell, or what was sighted in the skies over American cities throughout the 1940s and 50s, that these were UFOs of some kind of extraterrestrial origin.
Right.
Some of these, or many of these, were actually Nazi UFOs that were trying to exert pressure on U.S. authorities to negotiate deals whereby the Nazis would be able to then infiltrate the growing space program that was emerging in the United States. And that over the years, the U.S. space program was infiltrated by these Nazi elements. And I think that's going to be really shocking to people who believe that Nazi Germany was defeated comprehensively at the end of the Second World War, and that was the end of that. The thought that these people could still be around and influencing U.S. policy in some way is going to be really shocking. But when you look at Corey's testimony and match it up with what other whistleblowers have said, Clark McClelland, who worked at NASA for 34 years from 1958 to 1992, says that he met Hans Kammler, the German general in charge of the SS at the Kennedy Space Center in the office of Kurt Dubois, who was the director. So here you have the person in charge of Nazi secret weapons programs in the Kennedy Space Center talking with its director. And McClellan went in there and he saw them and met them. And so this is just one example of many substantiating Corey's testimony.
So what you're saying, Michael, is even after the war in 45, even after it ended, the Nazis continued doing something with ET technology, something like that?
Correct. That in fact, what the Nazis did was that they were able to relocate a lot of their advanced technologies, even before the Second World War began, to Antarctica and South America, so that by the time the war kind of went through its tragic path, that a lot of the Nazi advanced technologies were being safely developed in Antarctica. So what the Allies got their hands on at the end of the Second World War was really the kind of Nazi weaponization program, which was not the most advanced. The most advanced technologies had been developed in Antarctica and South America throughout the war years without any significant interruption. And so that gave them the capability to actually develop interplanetary travel.
You aren't saying, though, that we did not have extraterrestrial visitations. I don't hear that coming from you.
That's correct. I think what was important with the development of the Nazi flying saucer program was that they were themselves being helped by extraterrestrials, and that the extraterrestrials sided with the Nazis to a certain extent. We're talking about one particular group that had similar kind of ideology or beings that were described from the place or the star system Aldebaran, and that these extraterrestrials, or perhaps they were other beings claiming to be extraterrestrials, but nevertheless they assisted the Nazis with information and even with ultimately some technology when the Nazis established their bases in Antarctica and South America. So yes, it really is a matter of these extraterrestrial alliances being formed by Nazi Germany and other nations later on as they developed their own secret space programs.
There was a group of there were a couple of groups of non-terrestrials that the Nazis ultimately made contact with, and also a group of what we've called ancient Earth breakaway civilizations that were groups that had moved to the inner part of the Earth, that were a part of civilizations that are not on the Earth anymore, that had succumbed to catastrophes, and the elite of those groups moved below ground. And over the years, those groups have presented themselves to people on the surface as if they are gods. And as we became more sophisticated, they started presenting themselves to us as though they were ETs from different star systems. And they had very, very sophisticated technology.
Tell me about Admiral Byrd and his trips, Michael.
Well, Admiral Byrd is a key figure because it was he that was very much involved with finding and actually ferreting out the Nazis that had established bases in Antarctica, both before and after the Second World War. What's really significant is that in 1939, Admiral Byrd received orders from President Roosevelt to travel down to Antarctica in some Navy ships to actually locate any Nazi bases that had been established that might be actually infringing on territories that the U.S. Viewed as potentially being in violation of the Monroe Doctrine. So Roosevelt's directive or orders to Admiral Byrd is very significant because it shows that the Nazis actually did establish bases in Antarctica before the Second World War began. And as Corey has described in his testimony, basically that became the basis for a breakaway civilization that the Nazis had developed that was distinct to what was being developed by the SS in Europe, which was more of a weapons program. And then after the Second World War, Operation High Jump, that many people are familiar with, is when Admiral Byrd, for the second time, received orders to locate and basically ferret out any Nazi bases. And this time he did, but he was unsuccessful because the Nazis actually had established an alliance and had their own technologies as well, where they were able to basically inflict great damage on the naval task force that Admiral Byrd was in charge of.
They were living mainly underground.
Okay.
In the inner Earth. You mentioned hollow Earth. It's more of a honeycomb Earth with huge caverns larger than Texas with giant cities in them.
Still ongoing?
Absolutely.